This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It is 11:06 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. Time for Ask a Rabbi.
Hello there. This is Rabbi Shafir Lobb from Congregation Eitz Chayim, and this is Ask a Rabbi, and it would help if I put my little ears on so I can hear.
Put your muffs on there.
There you go. Yeah, my muffs. Yay. And I love the music. Thank you. That's always fun for me. So, welcome to Ask a Rabbi. And I had a kind of an interesting week this week. I was dealing with a number of my Christian colleagues, and they invoked prayers, as they often do, in Jesus' name. And the real kicker for me when that happens is that I'm not included in those prayers. And they don't realize that. And, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Yeah. Never thought of that.
Right. Well, so it's it's always an interesting thing because we're caught up in language when we do things dealing with interfaith. And that's probably one of the trickiest things for me because there are a number of people that I interact with, and when they invoke prayer, I have to sit and wait and find out if I'm included. And it's usually at the very end, so that's a real, you can, what can I say? I have to wait until the kicker to find out if I'm included.
I would think interfaith is interfaith.
It should be, and when you're doing interfaith, you should be praying in the most inclusive language that you possibly can.
Exactly.
And so it's okay to say in thy name or in, something like that, but don't name an individual because then you're starting to isolate things. And I know that's not their intention. Right. I know or at least I hope that's not their intention.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a subtle thing. And for some folks...
Well, you brought out a lot of subtleties over the last year.
Yes, I have. I've brought out a lot of subtleties. And so I thought part of what I would talk about a little bit today... I've already got a phone call. That didn't take long. Stuart, line 1. Thank you, Stuart. Okay, Stuart made it all the way out to his car.
I've already got a phone call.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Stuart.
Hello, you hit a nerve.
I hit a nerve. Okay.
You hit a nerve. I have my entire life been uncomfortable when all of a sudden a school prayer or a prayer at a ball field all of a sudden ends in Jesus' name. And I feel completely alienated, completely left out, as if I don't exist. And I even hear it at the inauguration of presidents, even presidents I like. And I always wonder, why is that really necessary? I know that, when you're in a church, certainly you're going to do it. But when you're at a public event where, there are Jews and there are Muslims and whomever else, why can't you just do a regular prayer, which I assume counts just as much for them, but doesn't ostracize, anybody who doesn't believe in Jesus?
Okay, there are some groups of Christians who do not believe it's a valid prayer if they don't use it. But again, there's language to work around it. Right? They can say in your name, and they know who they mean, and we can understand it to not mean that. Okay, so that's a little bit, all religious practices have around them some maneuvering, right? Religious fictions. The Shabbos Goy is an example of a Jewish religious fiction, right? If you're asking somebody to do something, then they're your agent, and it's as if you're doing it. So, very seldom does the Shabbos goy not receive instructions on what to do. If they do it without, and I've had that case, my family has benefited from it, where we did not instruct somebody to do it, and they did an act just because they knew that my mother wouldn't have on a Saturday. And that was back in the day of the milkmen. This particular milkman who was delivering stuff, and it was his habit, he would come in the morning, and he would actually put the milk in the fridge.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, this is back when the dinosaurs roamed in the backyard, or at least the deer. And this was in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania, and I guess I was
East or West Stroudsburg.
Thank you. No, it was regular Stroudsburg, not East. Full Stroudsburg. And it was the tail end of when milkmen did delivery, and he picked up the empty bottles out of the container, which was in the kitchen, and he put the fresh milk in the fridge. And on Saturday, we came out the first Saturday morning after he was delivering milk, and the coffee was perking. The coffee was in a percolator back then. And he basically, made the coffee because he knew that a rabbi's wife wouldn't make coffee on a Saturday morning because that was starting an electrical appliance. And so we got to have really hot coffee instead of the bottle of cold coffee that was in the fridge. So that was an example of a Christian doing something for us without having received any instruction. And when she talked to him about it sometime later, he said that he had noticed that it used to be when he would come in the previous rabbi's house that coffee was always brewing every day except Saturday. And that he figured it out and just did it one time, and that it was appreciated. And we certainly appreciated it the entire time we lived there as well. So, those things. But that doesn't happen very often. So, can a Christian work around wanting to invoke Jesus' name? Absolutely they can. For some, they're on autopilot when they go into prayer mode, and they say it without thinking. Very often, though, it's also out of ignorance. They simply do not recognize that everybody in the world is not Christian. Right? I always have this discussion somewhere in the course of a course. Right? America never was a Christian nation. And you go, well, no, America never was, because each of the colonies had a different brand of Christianity that they wanted to promote, and people could not agree on any one form. Right? You can't have a Christian nation that's both Protestant, Catholic,
unless you're Ireland.
Congregational. Well, no. Ireland has a state religion.
Yeah.
Right? And then you can be something else, and that's okay. But, and England has the Church of England.
Right.
But when you have a state religion, you learn about that religion in school. Your taxes support that religion. That clergy is paid through the state. Right? There's a whole lot of other stuff that happens that Americans are totally unaware of. Right? We are a country whose majority certainly was and probably still is Christian, although losing ground. It's not nearly at the rate it was 10 years ago, and it'll be interesting when the census, because there are people who voluntarily put their faith tradition on the census, and that's collected. And also Pew does estimates by calling people and things like that. So, it's partially a matter of what you were taught as a child, what you were taught in church, but America has always had non-Christian citizens and continues to. And, so what is it that's different? Well, as I've mentioned in a previous class, Islam has Jesus as Messiah sitting at the right hand of God, having been crucified. But of course, Islam is a religion that's not that old. It's not even 2,000 years old. And so Christianity was around and kicking, if you will. And so Muhammad studied with Christians, and he knew about Jesus. So it's not surprising that Jesus is included in the Quran. It's a mystical birth. It's all of the wonderful things of religious leaders, but it's not the Son of God. Jesus is a prophet. He is the Messiah. He's just not the Son of God. For Judaism, of course, Jesus happens after Scriptures is closed by hundreds of years. I mean, we're not even talking 20 or 30 or 50 years.
Right.
We're talking hundreds of years. Scripture is closed with the book of Daniel. And that happens well before the Romans come into Jerusalem, and you don't have Jesus until after the Romans come in, because otherwise you're not going to have a meeting with Pilate. Mm-hmm. Right? You just can't have that. So, and you're not going to have Herod and all these other things. So, for Jews, most Jews really don't know enough about Jesus to really even engage a Christian in a discussion about what Jesus is or isn't. And, is there a crossover, Jews hear about it and try to figure out what it is, but since we don't usually teach it in synagogues, most Jews have no idea who or what Jesus really is or was, whether to Christians or to anybody else. And it is one of the huge differences. Judaism does not ascribe one child to God, but rather all of us as God's children, equal in God's sight. And that's a significant difference. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the other...
Well, I'm going to hang up and listen, Rabbi.
Okay.
When you first started, it really hit a chord.
I hear you, and it's very hard for me, because I'm in a number of organizations where Christians do get up and pray, and even though some of the organizations to which I belong have it spelled out and say, do not invoke any one faith tradition over any other, that prayer might be okay, but prayers need to be to the Supreme Being or to God. It's much more generic.
I remember when we had an interfaith service in tradition after the shooting in Orlando.
Correct.
And you spoke, and some ministers spoke, and priest spoke, and imam spoke,
mm-hmm.
and all the prayers, I think, were acceptable to everybody.
Well, that's because
I don't think anybody was alienated by any of the things that any of the clergy said, and I thought that was great.
Yeah. Well, part of that is the Interfaith Clergy Alliance of the Treasure Coast is pretty savvy about how to be inclusive, because we have all of us on that council, or the alliance, I should say. It's an alliance, the Interfaith Clergy Alliance of the Treasure Coast. And that group is used to interacting together and is sensitive enough and savvy enough to recognize that God is bigger than any one faith tradition, and that when you are as inclusive as you possibly can be, you're being more inclusive. And that's to me the right way to do it. Now, as you pointed out, if I go into a Baptist church or a Catholic church or something like that, I'm going to expect to hear Jesus invoked, because that's their liturgy.
Well, yeah, that's
their liturgy. And I'm a visitor in their house of worship.
And I don't know if you recall, but I remember telling you about 4 years ago when I had occasion for the first time in decades to go into a church, for, I think it was an Easter service with somebody. And I remember saying to you, with the exception of the word Jesus that I heard a lot, which I understood because I was in a church, but with the exception of that, none of the prayers were inconsistent with my beliefs.
Well, most of the
and
prayers...
I thought that was wonderful.
Yeah. Most of the prayers come from the same kinds of scriptures.
I was going to say.
Yeah. Very often, well, the Psalter, right, the book of Psalms, was the first prayer book. That was its function. That's one of the differences between Judaism and Christianity, actually, is Judaism looks at that as beautiful poetry and prayer, not
Scripture.
Scripture, but not prophecy.
Okay, there you go.
Right, it's not prophecy. Yep. It's not foretelling something. And usually it's viewed as David's feelings or one of the other group, because David only wrote some of the Psalms. And he probably didn't write all of the ones that carry his name, just like nobody carries everything that's in their name, because that's the easiest way to get something accepted, is to put it in somebody's name who's powerful, and etc. But only, I'm forgetting the number, but I want to say it's somewhere higher than 70 of the 150 Psalms carry David's name. Now, some of them
Well, I'm going to hang up and
carry
thank
the
you.
sons of Korah. You're welcome. So, yeah.
That's intriguing, though. This was like a public meeting?
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes it's public meetings. Sometimes, where it happened to me actually most recently was on a phone call talking about a mutual. Was me and another clergy who was not a member of our alliance, talking about another clergy person, and invoking a prayer on their behalf. And it was a beautiful prayer until we got to the end. And I'm sitting there on the phone and I'm like, okay, what do I do now? Because I'm not going to say amen, because that would imply that I'm included. Right? Because amen to me,
yeah. That you're right. Yeah.
Amen comes from the I believe, and it's Jewishly saying amen to a prayer is to own that prayer and send it on. It's like put a booster rocket on it.
Mm-hmm.
And here I didn't want to invalidate this person's prayer, but I also didn't. I couldn't
send it on.
I couldn't send it on the same way.
Yeah, no, I get it.
I get it. So I had to be the respectful step back, and and all I could say, I think I mumbled something like "May it be," or
Well, yeah, I was going to say, what could be a retort to
just,
something like that?
So may it be, or I mumbled something like that.
Okay.
Because it, amen includes the connotation of faith. And so, these are subtle little things. And again, I don't think it was done to exclude me. I believe that it was done because that person got into that space and, felt Jesus's presence, and etc. And that's wonderful for that person. It's not great for the non-Christians in the group. And yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
People might not realize that, but that's actually being, some people are downright nasty about it. And they'll say, well, don't you believe in God? Yeah, I believe in God. There's a difference for me between God and Jesus. There might not be for you, but there is for me. It's not a different God. It's a different relationship with God. Okay? And I think that most Christians, when pushed, will distinguish God the Creator from Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
As in more the Father, right? And so it's
Sure.
and so you look at something like the Christian story of the prodigal son. Okay. You've got two children to that father in that story. One wanders off and becomes a pig farmer, or pig shepherd, or whatever it is, cares for somebody's sheep, and he finally decides, hey, I'd be better off taking care of the animals at my father's farm. He treats his people better than I'm being treated, speaking of employer relations. and so he decides to come home, and the father's so happy to see him because he didn't think he'd ever see them. But the other son has always been there, and what I think a lot of people don't realize, that's the story of Christianity and Judaism. Right? Jews have never left.
Mm-hmm.
They've stayed with God. And so, that's the other son. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get that out of that story.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't done it recently, but if people really want it, let me know. But I have often taught a course. I taught it very often in Tucson. The Jewish understanding of Christian scriptures. Because you have to realize that the Christian scriptures were written by Jews for Jews, talking about Jesus. And then when Rome makes it the state religion, some of the meanings shift and change to Roman understandings. And perhaps there was some editing, but without
Darn Italians.
Without some of the documentation. Stop that. without some of the documentation that's probably in the bowels of the Vatican.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, I'd love
it's
to get my
there.
hand on those. All right, there's some really interesting things. Like, for example, today when Christians read scriptures and they see LORD in in small capital letters, small uppercase letters, they see that as being Jesus, and it's not. It's actually God's name. It's the Tetragrammaton, the Yud He Vav He, which we usually say Adonai for it. And if you find old manuscripts, old Christian manuscripts, then God's name is in that place, and it became Lord down the road, perhaps with typesetting, I'm not sure, but it shifts. Now I'm going to say the shift is earlier than the press. So at some point they decide to take the Yud He Vav He, God's name, and change it to Lord, and then over time, Christians take that to mean Jesus.
So this would be like in the time of Martin Luther, maybe.
I'm thinking it's earlier than Martin
Earlier?
Luther. Yeah, I want to say that it's somewhere around 500, 500.
Oh wow! Okay.
That it starts to shift. But I'm speaking out of memory, and I'll put that caveat out there that I need to look back at see what because there are old manuscripts that have the Tetragrammaton in that location, and that's the same convention that Jewish scriptures use to use Lord. The Orthodox have put in Hashem, which means the name. And again, if you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, you can see in the Dead Sea Scrolls the shifting from, they used to write the Yud He Vav He in what we now call Paleo Hebrew, which is an older font, if you will, an older alphabet that was used for writing Hebrew. The Samaritans have continued to use that alphabet. But when the Jews were exiled into Babylon, they picked up what's called Syriac Hebrew. And so the alphabet that we use today comes out of Babylon. And when the scrolls were first starting to be rewritten, there's a big discussion in Talmud about which scrolls can we write in Syriac and what do we have to write still in the old Paleo. And as they're transitioning documents from one alphabet to the other, they continue to write God's name in the Paleo Hebrew because the old alphabet carries power with God's name written that way. And it takes a while for that power to shift into the new alphabet. And so, we can date, that's one of the ways we date scrolls, is by when God's name changes, and which scrolls change it first. Gives you an idea of how holy that scroll is. Is it commentary or is it scripture?
Now, are there any discrepancies in those languages?
It's just an alphabet change. It's
Just
transliterated.
alphabet change, okay.
It's right. The alphabet that we use today, we recognize as being thanks to the Phoenicians, because the Phoenicians ran a lot of the ports and did a lot of the land to water Silk Road interactions. And it's missing a part of the story to not include what we know about history and sociology and what's going on, and understand how religions interact with themselves and with each other, both in ancient times and through the ages, because it does change and it shifts. And, the printing press had a huge effect. The King James translation had a huge effect. We're still trying to work our way back out of that one. And so lots of things have happened. And, so once God's name becomes Lord and it changes over and to Christians becomes Jesus, well, then when they look back at Jewish scriptures, they think Jesus is in it as well, because they're just not paying attention to what's really going on. Right? They've lost the piece because they're not looking at the Hebrew undercoat or even the early Greek or Latin undercoats, because they're dealing strictly from some derivative of the King James in English. And so you're so removed from the text that some of these things, they can't imagine that Jews don't have a relationship with Jesus. And one of my good friends, a retired Methodist minister, you know who it is. She sat in the studio with me occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about one of the professors in her seminary who was Jewish and taught Jewish scriptures, but who, when people would come up to him and say something about Jesus, and he would go, "Who? What?" And never even acknowledged any understanding or who that was, staying in. So, there are some fundamental differences in understanding the human role. Not so much God, but understanding the human role. Jews say, we have a covenant with God. We cut a contract, and that contract's still binding on us and on God. Kind of nebulous contract. Be my people and I will be your God. But, and different people add things to that or not. But the point of that is that it's a consensual agreement on both sides. And that's never been abandoned. It's never been nullified for a Jew. There's no reason, there's no problem. The other really big fundamental difference between Judaism and Christianity is the concept of original sin.
Oh.
Right? Well, I understand it creates all kinds of challenges.
Oh, you bring back memories. Oh, yes.
Yes, Mr. Catholic.
Oh.
Right.
Oh,
Judaism has no concept of original sin.
Really? Okay.
Well, whatever it is that Eve ate,
right,
and shared with the man standing next to her at the time, right? He wasn't out in Poughkeepsie or something. He was next to her, and together they came up to the tree and ate it. It's just, she took the first bite, he took the second bite. Whoopee, and
ladies first.
Yeah, something like that. And so we didn't inherit anything from that. We probably got some molecules from whatever fruit that was, and it probably wasn't an apple because apples didn't grow in the Middle East at that time. They do now, but that's because seeds have been brought everywhere. How did it get to be an apple? Well, an Italian artist was looking out the window. There go your Italians again. Looking out the window and saw a beautiful apple tree and said, of course that's the apple. Of course the apple would be an appropriate fruit. But it, probably be much more likely a date, a pomegranate, or a fig, or something that actually grows in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, in theory, all vegetable and animal come out of the garden.
Yes, and all these massive interpretations
Right.
of that story.
Right. And so there's some real simple logic. It's not that. And I had some fundamentalists stand up in one class and say to me, well, God introduced death after the apple. It's like, no, God didn't introduce death after the apple. God explained death after. Right. Because the way that Jews understand that story, so we've got 25 minutes. I'm looking at the clock.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about that story of the garden. So for Jews, the story in the garden is about growing up, because you cannot accept God unless you can reject God. Okay. You cannot accept God unless you have the power to say no. You can't embrace something unless you don't have to. Let's back up a minute.
Boy, that's deep.
Okay, it is very deep. It's extremely deep. Love is the one emotion that we've got as human beings that cannot be mandated. You cannot order somebody to love you. You can order them to obey you. You can order them to fear you. You might even be able to regulate respect. Thank you, military. Right. Those things you can do, and you can carry them out, but you can't love something without it being an act of free will. Fear, anger, all those other emotions are control emotions. Love is not. If you love something, you do not seek to control it at all. You might want what's best for it, but you will not control it. You will love it. Right? And it doesn't earn it. It's not conditional. Real love is not conditional. Right? When a parent loves a child, the moment it's born, it hasn't done anything to earn that other than exist. Right? So love is an amazing emotion, and it's totally different from the other emotions that humans have. And yet it's the emotion that God most wants. Right? Love God.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's not a command. That's an invitation. It's a request. Because surely God understands that can't be ordered from anybody. So in order to have a mature enough relationship, a child loves you, but it's a child's love. It's not the same kind of giving that an adult has for another being, right? Whether it's a human or an animal. So, there's child affection that a child gives to its parents. But again, love is not conditional. It's not love me if this, love me if that. No, that's not love. That's control. Right? That's manipulative on the part of the person pretending to love.
And we know that doesn't ever happen.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah. It happens all the time. Right. In fact, it happens probably more than real love. Because real love is just it's incredible. It's incredible to both give it and to receive it. It's a gift on both sides. Because when you really love something, you so want everything for it that you release that control, and that feels good. To just allow the object of love to flourish. And so getting back to it.
That's why I always love my dogs.
Dogs are really good at unconditional
Yeah,
love back.
no, they are. They are.
And you can be a thief and a murderer, and the dog will go, "Hey, I'm so happy to see you." You just stepped on my toe, and that really hurt, but I still love you. And that's part of why it's important for a parent to really love their child instead of controlling their child. But that one's so hard because parents want the kid. They don't necessarily want what's best for the kid all the time. Ooh, I'm going to hear it from all the parents. But often they want the kid to be a mini-me.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
right?
no,
Right. There's this.
Yeah.
I want you to be what I want you to be. I don't care that you love art. I want you to be a doctor.
Right.
And we certainly have that kind of manipulation going on, unfortunately, between parents and children. But getting back to it, God is smarter than that. And God recognizes two things. One, in the garden, it's like we still have kindergarten, folks. We put children in the garden to grow up. As they're, starting to experience the world, they live in a garden. They are given clothes. They don't know if they're naked. Watch a little kid. A little kid will, show you their rear ends because they think, that it's cute. They've been told it's cute, so they'll show it to everybody because they don't have that angst around showing their private parts. That doesn't come until when? There's a magic piece.
School. Yeah.
Well, we dress them for school. But when does a kid really start to recognize it? Is it puberty?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Right. When the hormones start to fly, things change. That's what the story of Adam and Eve is. That's the fruit that's being eaten, folks. It's the fruit of knowledge. Okay? Right. To know somebody is to have a deep interconnection. And that's what lets them know that they're naked. And so when God comes and says, Ayeka, where are you? God doesn't know where God's children are? Come on now. God's a much better parent than that. That question is not, where are you? But what's your head feeling right now, hon? What were you thinking? Where have you been? Where are you? What's going on in your head now? Are you ready to understand life? Well, you kind of don't have a choice, because in about 9 months from now, you're going to have this bundle of joy of your own, because I know what you did. And so, guess what? You now have to leave the garden. You have to go out. And what sounds like a curse to Adam and Eve is not. It's a recognition, it's a teaching of the system, and it's actually God's love. It's Eve, I don't know how to break this to you, but giving birth is not easy. You share that with all animals. There's pain, but you're going to want to do it often because you're going to want a big family. We're talking about a time in history where we were subsistence farmers. We were beginning to farm,
Sure.
and still somewhat hunter-gatherers, but shifting over to farming. And so a big family allows the farm to be healthy. So guess what, Eve? You're going to get to do this over and over again, and I'm going to try to make it easy and have you kind of forget about what the pain was when you decide to have the next child and the next child and the next child. And you'll do it anyway. And and I've seen that in my dogs. We were talking about dogs. I've been there when dogs have given birth, and it's very often painful for the female dog, but she doesn't care because she's got her babies. Same thing, right? It's worth the pain, what you get from it. So, Adam, you're going to get to go out and break your back until these kids are old enough to help you. You're going to work really hard. It's not a punishment, it's an instruction. Right? When I tell a student, you're going to have to do this paper, that's not a punishment. That's instructional.
Sure.
And the same thing's happening with God and Adam and Eve. Eve, this is what life is about. You're going to be pregnant and cooking and working and taking care. And Adam, you're going to be breaking your back until the kids are old enough to help. And, people say, well, we were prevented from going into the garden. That's not what it says. It says that the angel guards the path to the tree of life. And the tree of life is the Torah. We even sing that in our liturgy. Eitz Chayim, it's the name of my congregation, Tree of Life. Eitz Chayim it is a tree of life to those who hold fast to it, and all of its pathways are peace. And so the angel is guarding the path to that volume of knowledge and understanding of how to live in community. Because that's really what the book's all about, is how to live with yourself and how to live with others. And the angel guards you when you're on the path. You're going to fall off. You're human. That's human nature. And when you're off the path, you're on your own. Get back on the path. Continue studying and learning about life and people. And the path is guarded.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Little different understanding of the same story.
A little? It's a totally different
Right. So the
understanding.
story in the garden is about growing up and about recognizing the responsibility of free will. And recognizing that we have it. We have the power to disobey. We have the power to do wrong. And God isn't going to zap us with a lightning bolt. Sorry about that, all the atheists who want to say, this is proof that God doesn't exist because God hasn't zapped me. God didn't zap Adam and Eve. That wasn't the point. The point was to discover you will live even if you're disobedient, but you won't be on the path. It won't be as easy for you. So as long as you buck the path, if you will, as long as you continue to challenge God, you get hit with what I call divine 2x4s. You'll be encouraged to come back to the path, to understand what it is, to open yourself up to God's love. And hopefully you will, in you, discover that there is a love of life, not just a drive to be alive, but a love for loving, a drive for loving. And, we're wired that way. We're happiest when we are loving something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We're our best selves when we love something. And then, of course,
That's
have...
everyone.
That's everybody. It doesn't. I don't care what your faith tradition is. That's human nature. That's the way we're wired. And so that, to me, is, if you will, my evidence of the relationship and the connection. And that's my understanding of that story. Okay, so it's a very different story. It's not about being sinful or having to be, brought back into God's presence. I never left. And as I've invited more than one person, come into our house of worship, come into our service on a Friday night or a Saturday morning, and tell me if you don't feel God's presence. Because I think it's very powerfully there. And, it's there in the love that we share with each other and with life and the source of life. Because you can't love life without loving the source of that. And so we get back to one of my definitions, if you will. And I say, let's start with the definition that God is the force that causes breath.
Ooh, I like that.
Okay? Right, 'cause something makes you breathe.
Mm-hmm.
At one level, I don't care if it's an accident of nature. Something made you breathe. And we know that when people stop breathing, or an animal stops breathing, it's no longer alive. Right? Life is the breath. The word for breath in Hebrew and the word for soul are connected. Neshima, neshama. They're related.
Ooh.
Yeah, they're very related. So there's a deep connection between soul and breath. And soul is a part of God. So while you're breathing, the mystic would say, you're being breathed by God. And your breath is breathing God.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, so there's this deep interconnection. And what I'm saying is that God is that source of that function. And whatever it is beyond that is a function of your experience and your understanding and your relationship with it. And no two of us will ever have the same connection, the same relationship, the same understanding. That's why Judaism says, in our liturgy, we have a prayer that says, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, the God of Sarah, the God of Rebekah, the God of Rachel, the God of Leah. Why don't we say the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob? Because it's not the same relationship with God. It is one God, the God creator who created the universe and created it, who is not Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, atheist, or anything else. God is God. We choose our relationship with that force. And so this prayer seeks to acknowledge that Abraham had a relationship with God. It was different from Isaac's. It was different from Jacob's. It was different from Sarah's. It was different from Rebekah's. We're not cut. We're cut from the same cloth, if you will, because we're all human, but we're a different piece of the fabric. And if you want to have the whole bolt,
I like that.
you need all of us. Yeah. Right. So it's, for us, the story in the garden is a beautiful story about the beginning of life and growing up. And, it comes with some pain. It comes with some pain. It comes with some hard work. And that's what we hopefully can pass on to our children. There's another little sidebar to that. We just read in our congregations the giving of the, not the giving of the tablets, but Moses' recount in Deuteronomy. And it's slightly different text. And it is said that when God was getting ready to do that, God said, what are you going to give me if I give you these instructions? And the people said, well, we'll give you ourselves. And God said, I got you already. It's no big deal. And finally, they went through this and they went through that, and none of it was acceptable. Finally, they said, our children. And God says, that works. Teach your children to have a relationship with me. And we've got a deal. Right. So Judaism says we've got an obligation to teach our children to have an intelligent adult relationship with God. One where you're able to enter into a covenant relationship, a voluntary contractual agreement to do what you can to support life, to recognize that all people are God's children and that we are all the same fabric. Right? You know, the king of Id notwithstanding, who jumps off the bed and jumps into his trousers, most of us have to put them on one leg at a time. Right, unless you lay back in bed and pull them on, but you know, you got to do something. But we all have two legs, or theoretically have two legs anyway. We all have breath.
Mm-hmm.
When it all comes down to it, we all have breath, and we are all entitled to that breath. Even those among us who are not kind are still human beings. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes that's hard. But that's the price of free will. So when people say to me, you know, how could God allow? God gave us free will. Right? God contracted God's power, if you will, to make space for human beings to have free will. Because you can't only have free will until Thursday or until the edge of the yard. You know, you give your kid that kind of freedom, but that's not free will. Right? When you make a cow free range, you let it go, and it goes wherever it wants to go. And it has to fend for itself. And that's, you know, that's the relationship that God gives, which is to allow you. You can destroy the planet because that's free will. I hope we don't.
Mm.
Right. In which case, I think God will look at this and say that, well, that one didn't work.
Well, that was a failed experiment.
Yeah, it was a failed experiment. You know, and theoretically, God knows already if that's going to be the case or not, and I'm hoping that it's not. I'm hoping we're smart enough to care enough about each other and ourselves. Because the other reality that comes out of that, which is an instruction in Torah, is you shall love each person as you love yourself. Well, there's two sides to that. One, you have to, you know, have this relationship with other people and want what's best for them for their sake. And you have to want what's right for you, for your sake. Right? So there's that instruction that says, you know, tighten the mask on your own face, and then you can tighten it on your child. Because if you try to tighten it on your child first, there won't be enough of you to give. And I try to caution that, especially to caregivers. Take care of yourself so that there is enough of you to give.
That's always so difficult.
It is very difficult. You know, we have a syndrome called caretaker syndrome where people don't take care of themselves. But the real bottom line is if you don't do that, then you will run out, you will burn up, and you won't be there when that person needs you the most. So you have to take care of yourself too. So all of that plays in, and so I invite people to ponder the connection between us and among us rather than what makes us different. As I've said other times, it's one universe created by one God. That's not any different. Any religion that holds to a creator God has the same creator God unless they've got multiple universes in it. And maybe they can take turns, I don't know. But, you know, somebody's got to have kicked everything off. And I'm going to say that that's that force that causes breath, if we really track it back. So, how was that for a nice, light Ask the Rabbi?
Whoa.
Yeah. So, here we are.
Didn't even have my knuckles slapped on this one.
So, we are about to take the march, and we come to the Holy Day season. We're coming toward Yom Kippur, which is in October this year. It's always
That's
in
late.
Tishrei.
Or late September, early October, yeah.
Yeah, Rosh Hashanah is, I think, the 30th of September is the evening,
Yep.
the 1st of October, and the registration is open for coming to Congregation Eitz Chayim, which meets on 540 Northwest University Boulevard, Suite 102. It's an office building. We're still very much growing. We're a young congregation, and we're trying to hold things economically as we grow. But please check things out at our website. You can find us on Facebook at Congregation Eitz Chayim. Just kind of Google that and you'll find it. Our website is www.eitzchayim.org. www.eitzchayim.org. EITZCHAYIM. And you're welcome to check us out there as well. The schedule is not yet up, but I'm hoping that it'll be up before the weekend's over. So you should be able to register online if you'd like to join us.
I was just going to ask you that. Can you register online?
Anybody can register online. And no, we're not selling tickets. We don't believe in pay to pray. So
pray to pay.
So you are welcome to join us. We do. We request a donation, but a free will donation, because we also operate on the assumption that, guess what? You're a human being. You're an adult. You know that it takes money to pay the rent, pay the utilities, pay the insurance, pay me, all those things. Because I got to eat too and pay rent, and all those things cost the congregation money. And so we expect you to be adult about it and, treat us as you would treat yourself if you were the congregation. Mm-hmm. We call that the heart and pocket model. Give what your heart expects you to give, tempered by what your pocket can tolerate. And
and going back to the very beginning of this hour, I think that it is incumbent on whoever is running meetings that open with a prayer, that those prayers be inclusive.
It is. It really is. And I know that I am as inclusive as I can be when I'm the one tasked with leading a prayer, recognizing that different people have different needs. And I usually end by saying, in your name, right? To allow those who need that to have that anchor, but knowing that I'm intending it for God, because what does it mean to name God? Judaism has a name for God, Yud He Vav He, the is, was, will be. It's an interesting. That'll be another good topic.
That sounds like another hour.
Yeah, it sounds like another hour, because I'm certainly not going to start it at 2 minutes to the end of the hour. But I will say that we have Slichot services in September. That Saturday, the Saturday before Rosh Hashanah, a full week before it, a week and a day before it. That's in the evening. That schedule will also be up on Facebook and on our website. We're also going to be doing some Intro to Judaism, and I would be derelict in my duty if I didn't mention the Treasure Coast Expo in November at the Community Center on Aroso, and the Art and Craft Show and the Direct Sellers in February. Please check all those things out. This is Rabbi Shafir Lobb for Congregation Eitz Chayim. Have a great week.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL Port St. Lucie, WPSL.com, worldwide on Alexa and Google Home.